Now, if you take out your message notes inside your program, this weekend I want us to continue our series on God's amazing promises. Over 7,000 of them in Scripture. And I specifically this weekend want us to look at one that you may not think is real appropriate for you until I explain it. And that is God's promises to you when you're afraid of failing. When you are afraid of failing. Now, you may not think that that's a problem with you, but we don't always realize how big a deal it is. So I want to begin with a little quiz. We're not always self-aware about the fears that are inside of us. So let me read you 9 tests of do you have a fear of failure. Number 1, do you ever worry about what other people think about you? That's the fear of failure. Do you ever worry about your ability to go after a dream or a desire that's in your heart, but you thought, maybe, I don't know if I could do that or not. I dream of doing it, but I don't know if I could. That's the fear of failure. You ever worry that people will lose interest in you? Maybe people who are close to you, people who love you. Maybe do you ever worry that people won't think you are smart or competent? And I've got to hide. I don't want people to know that I really don't think I'm that smart. Do you ever worry about disappointing people whose opinion you value? Have you ever told anybody beforehand that you don't expect to succeed in a project in order to lower their expectations? That's the fear of failure. Do you ever get last-minute headaches, stomach aches, or other physical symptoms while preparing for something you think is important? That's the fear of failure. Do you ever get distracted or often get distracted by things that prevent you from completing your preparation, which were not as urgent as they seemed at the time? You get distracted. Number 9, do you tend to procrastinate and run out of time when you have to prepare for something? The fear of failure is behind most procrastination. Now, these are 9 common symptoms of the fear of failure. Now, no matter how successful you are in some areas of your life, there are others that you're scared to death about and you fail at. In fact, you fail in more areas of your life than you succeed. All of us do. Nobody can be good at everything. And so you're only really good at a few things. So that means most of the things in life you're not good at. You're a failure at. And we often don't want people to know that, and that anxiety causes us great problems. Now, the fear of failure will paralyze your potential. It will keep you from becoming all God intends for you to be. It will limit your purpose in life. The fear of failure is deathly. It will kill your dreams if you let them. It will rob your happiness. It will prevent your success. It can keep you single if you want to get married. The fear of failure. I could give you 100 negative things that the fear of failure does in your life. And so what I want to do today is talk about God's promises for the fear of failure. Now, this is so important. Jesus told a whole story about the fear of failure. It's called the parable of the talents. Now, we actually get our word talent from this story. Today, when I say the word talent, you think of abilities like a musical talent or a mathematical talent or mechanical talent or a sports talent. But we actually get the word talent from this story in the Bible. But in the Bible days, the word talent was actually a measurement of gold. Specifically, a talent of gold was amount of gold equal to the weight of a normal human being. So we're talking about an enormous amount of money. 1 talent would easily be worth over $1 million. A talent of gold, it is an exorbitant amount of money. Not just now, but in those days too. And Jesus tells this story about a fear of failure to represent how we're supposed to handle it. Let me read you the story. It's right here in Matthew chapter 25. Jesus told this story. A business owner was going to leave on a long journey, so he called his 3 servants together and he entrusted his wealth to them. To one servant, he gave 5 talents of money. That's a lot of money, maybe 5 million or more. To another, he gave 2 talents of money, and to a third servant, he gave 1 talent of money. That's still $1 million. And he did this each according to his own ability. And then he, the master, went on a journey. Now the servant who was entrusted with 5 talents went at once and used his money to gain back 5 more talents. In other words, he doubled his money. He made 100% on his investment. Pretty good investment. He had 5, now he's got 10. In the same way, the servant who was entrusted 2 talents, put his talents of money to work, and he gained 2 more. Again, he gets 100% return on his money, doubles his money. But the servant who had been given just the 1 talent did nothing. He went out and he dug a hole in the ground and he buried his master's money to keep it safe. Now, after a long time, the master of those 3 servants returned, and he asked each servant to give an account of what they had done with the money they had been entrusted with. Now, the man who had received 5 talents brought the other 5 that he had gained, and he said, "Master," he said, "you entrusted me with 5 talents, and see, I've gained 5 more for you here." His master replied, "Well done. Well done, you good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. So now I'm going to put you in charge of many greater things." Now, this is a parable, and Jesus is talking about he's invested in you, and he's asking you when you get ready to come to heaven, what did you do with what I gave you? My job as your spiritual coach, my job as your pastor, is to prepare you for the day when God says, what did you do with what I gave you? What I entrusted you, what I loaned to you, the talent that I loaned to you. And he said, I've doubled. And he says, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. Now I'm going to put you in charge of more, greater responsibility. Come and share your master's happiness. That's what I want God to say to you when you get to heaven. Now then the man who had received 2 talents gave his account. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents, and I've gained for you 2 more. And his master said, well done to you, good and faithful servant. You also have been faithful with a few things. So now I'll put you in charge of many larger things. Come and share your master's happiness. Now the last part of the story is there on your outline if you're taking notes. But the servant who had been given just 1 talent said, I was afraid I'd lose it. Now, if you're taking notes, circle on your outline the word afraid, because this is the fear of failure. He said, I was afraid I'd lose what you gave me. So I hid your talent, the talent that you gave me. In other words, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I played it safe. I went out and I buried it in the ground. Some of you have buried the talents that God has given you, and you're not using them. You're not using God's talents for His glory. I went out and I buried it in the ground, and now I'm handing it back to you. Now, what's the master's reaction? That made the master mad. And he said, you lazy and wicked servant. He said, you should have at least put it in the bank where it would gain some interest. He goes, you didn't even put it in the bank. You just hid it in the ground. He said, but you did nothing with what I gave you. Okay, everybody look up here just a minute. My greatest fear in life would be that you stand before God someday and God says, you did nothing with what I gave you. You did nothing with the talent I gave you. You just used it on yourself. You didn't make a difference in the world. You didn't make the world a better place. You didn't serve anybody else. You just served yourself. You did nothing with what I gave you. It is my responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen to you, and it is your responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen to you too. He says, you did nothing with what I gave you. So the master, this is God, says, I'm taking back the 1 talent I gave you, and I'm going to give it to the man who multiplied the 10 talents that I gave him. To those who use well what I give them, they will be given even more. Now, this is a principle of the universe that God has established. Whatever you use well in life, God will give you more of it. If you use your time well, God will give you more time. If you use your money well, God will give you more money. If you use your energy well, God will give you more energy. If you use the talent that He's put in you, He will give you more talent. On the other hand, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Talent that sits on the shelf rots. It wastes, it goes away, and you lose it. And God says, I'm going to give it to the guy out there who's using the 10 talents. Now he's going to have 11. This is a principle of the universe. And so you've got to get rid of the fear of failure. I was afraid and I hid it in the ground. Now this is a pretty harsh reaction if you look at it. He says, you're lazy, you're wicked, and I'm going to take away what I gave you in the first place and give it to somebody else because you're not using what I gave you for the way I intended it. Here's the point of the story. You never please God by playing it safe. You never please God by playing it safe. Now follow me on the logic of this. If you don't take any risks in life, you don't need any faith. And if you don't have any faith, then at that point you are being unfaithful. Let me say it again. If you're not taking any risks in your life for the benefit of other people, for the glory of God, you're not taking any risk, then you don't need any faith. And if you don't have any faith, then at that point you are being unfaithful. And God says, that's wicked. It's not just lazy, it's wrong, it's evil. I made you to make a difference with your life, not just live for yourself.